Okay then, we're joined by obviously one of your teachers, your lecturers, Jonny Watkin, and we're here to talk about scholarships in America. I'll let you, Jonny, introduce why you know so much about the scholarship system.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you know that I'm one of your FE lecturers at Loughborough College, and a lot of you might already know that I went through the US scholarship system about 12 years ago. So I went out right after college from Loughborough College at 18, and I stayed out in New York for approximately 8 years after doing a 4-year athletic scholarship before working and doing my master's degree, etc. after that.
So your sport obviously is football, and taking you back a little bit now, Jonny, mate, you were released by Rotherham.
Yep, that's correct.
So they were League One team at the time.
Yep.
And then obviously went out to America, and he was in Long Island to do.
Yeah, correct. So at 16, the year of sort of your youth contract, I was released by Rotherham. I was only there for about 6 months or so. And typically what happened was at sort of League One, League Two, they only really fund 1 or 2 players to go on and get that youth contract. So from there, I went on to study the BTEC Level 3 Sport at Rotherham College, as well as A-levels. And at the same time, Rotherham had an academy set up that was sort of the feeder team for Rotherham United. So after doing my first year, my coach at Rotherham College had actually played out in the United States, in Long Island in New York. For those of you that don't know, Long Island's about 45 minutes away from New York City, just on the outside of Queens and Brooklyn. At the time, I didn't know that at all. I had no clue where Long Island was, which I'm sure a lot of people don't either. But my coach at Rotherham managed to put me in touch with Hofstra University, which is a Division 1 school in Long Island. But at the same time, I'd already sent a few emails to different coaches at different points in the United States, such as Florida Tech, USC Santa Barbara in California. But again, I was very naive. I didn't really know where I wanted to go, what I wanted to study, why I really wanted to go to the US. Just somebody mentioned it to me and kind of ran with it. So in terms of my situation, when I'd finished my second year at Rotherham College, we ended up going on tour to New York just as a 10-day tour, which is it'd be a very unique situation considering how other people might go about looking for scholarships. But while I was out there, we played 5 games out on Long Island, in Brooklyn, on the outskirts of Manhattan as well. And on my last day, one of the coaches at Division 1 school at Hofstra had asked to have breakfast with me to have a chat. And I was fortunate enough then to kind of have a decision whether I wanted to go to the water park with the rest of the team or go with the coach to sign my scholarship paperwork. So I'd kind of been offered something on my last day. So obviously I took that as I'll definitely come to the office, sign out my paperwork. And that was at the beginning of July. I then had to get back to the UK, go through the US embassy system to get my visa and everything ready for pre-season come August. So I really only had about a 6-week turnaround time to figure out what was going off, what I was studying, what everything meant before I began on that journey. And then after sort of one semester, which was September to December, after that first season, things didn't really work out in terms of playing. I ended up transferring from a Division 1 school to a Division 2 school just because of finances and quite a few other things in terms of level of player and playing time, etc. So there's a lot of things to consider, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in this interview as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing to do is the application for kind of to get a scholarship in America. There's obviously a lot of companies out there that offer, this service. Do you want to talk about what that is and how that can be a pitfall and what the learners can actually do themselves without paying lots of money?
Absolutely. So at the time when I was doing it, it wasn't very popular going out to the US. Now it's a major thing where you've got a lot of students in the UK and outside of the UK and all over the world that want to go to the US to study it and play collegiate level, whatever sport they play. What we find in the UK at the minute is there's tons and tons of agencies that are like a middleman. And what they do is they'll charge you somewhere between £2,500 to £6,000, somewhere in that. And they'll create some kind of package where they'll put you in touch with coaches. You'll play in their sort of trial game that's videoed and then sent to coaches. They'll email coaches for you. They'll help you with your SAT and your US visa application. And a lot of it is, well, it's a business at the end of the day, and there's a lot of things in there that students can do on their own. The first thing they can do is research where they want to go. So, for example, New York is on the East Coast. It's 7 hours from the UK. It's quite an easy place to go back and forth from. You can email coaches yourself. All you need to do is go into the NCAA, which is the national governing body for collegiate sport. Go onto the NCAA website for your selected sport, and you can click on all the various schools that play under the NCAA. And from there, you'll find the rosters where you'll see who plays and where they're from. And you'll also find coaches' biographies. And in those coaches' biographies, you'll find email addresses where you can email coaches directly. Now, after I finished playing, after 4 years of being a college athlete, I then joined the coaching staff. So I kind of dealt with a little bit of recruiting. And personally, if a student emailed us from their own account, trying to get in touch and create a conversation and talk about where they want to go in their career, that looks much better than a middleman forwarding on emails for you. That just says to me that they're not really independent. Are they ready to go out to the United States to study for 4 years on their own? So I think the first thing students can do is, yes, they can have a look at the agencies that are about and see what they offer, because that might actually guide them in terms of what to do. But definitely get in touch with coaches in locations that you might want to study, if that's what you want to do. And then second to that, videoing games. I know a lot of colleges video their games. I'm sure Miguel, head coach, has access to footage that you could use and modify and create a YouTube recruitment video and just ping that email out to coaches then to look at. If they're interested, they'll.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think, like I said, they can make their own kind of video package that basically looks at the highlights, and that can be in any sport as well. And I think also making a sports CV, making a CV of what your achievements are, how you've gone about that, what your basically highest level of playing ability is. But I think it's really important to touch on the level of sport in America, because I think that's a big misconception. I think people think because you played soccer or football in England, you're going to go straight out to America. And I know myself from coaching out there, the level is so high.
Oh, absolutely. I think with it being so popular as well, you've got so many students and young teenagers, 18 to 22, all over the world going to want to go to the US. So, for example, when I first went to Hofstra University, I'd been released from Rotherham at 16, 17, around there. One of the first lads I played against was a lad from Real Madrid that got released a year ago. So you compare Real Madrid, 16-year-old, to a Rotherham United 16, it's chalk and cheese, and that's what we're looking at. Yeah. So I think it's very important that no matter what sport you play, you understand the level that you're at, and don't go into this being naive, thinking, "Oh, it's US soccer, it's not that good." Well, in actual fact, it isn't that good. It's actually very, very good. It's just a different system, and that'll be the same with basketball and with hockey. And it's really, really competitive because you have so many young athletes from all over the world wanting to join. Yeah. And not to mention, Americans are very different. They're extremely athletic people. Look at who wins the most gold medals in every Olympics. They're very, very athletic individuals. So, try not to be naive if you're going into doing this. And the way you can think about it is, if you look at a college roster, how many international players do they have? Because if they're recruiting internationally, they probably are in touch with academies, etc., and picking up those that didn't quite make it. Yeah. So, absolutely, the level's very good.
And I think it's important also to understand that the scholarship system in America is that each team gets given a certain amount of money for that year. Yeah. And how they spend that scholarship is totally down to the head coach. Now, they might just want to have one designated player that they pay for everything for. It may be that they want 4 or 5 players to boost the squad. So what's your experience been in regards to the scholarship side of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of money, and this is obviously a major thing, because coaches can divide this up however they want. NCAA rules are that a soccer team can have 10 scholarships. That differs on the different sports. So, for example, American football might have 20-something full scholarships. Now, let's say a scholarship, for sake of conversation, is $40,000 just for tuition. If we add room and board onto that, let's call that 50, and then other thing, let's call it 55. And you times that by 10, that's 550,000 per year to spend, and that's got to be divided up. However, your top players are going to end up with most money. And typically in sports, that's your attacking players that score the goals, right? So you've either got to be exceptionally outstanding to receive a completely full package, or you might be decent enough where they can give you some athletic money. Now, some universities will also give out academic scholarships depending on grades or where you're at currently, which we'll talk about in a second about the SAT. But coaches will divide up that 10 however they want to do it. It's their budget for the year. Now, let's say you got an offer at a 50% scholarship. That means you have to pay the other $25,000 per year, that is. That scholarship package might go up, it might go down. It all depends on performance, because ultimately it's a contract. They are 4 one-year contracts. And at the end of each season, you'll have a review with your coach. How did you get on? What went well? What are your improvements? What do you need to do to get better? And then we'll be looking for that statistically. Has he got better? So has he or she scored more goals? Have they made more saves? Whatever it is. And if so, the coach might be inclined to go, right, in my budget this year, I've got an extra £10,000 because so-and-so has graduated. Right, I'll give you an extra 10 grand. That's fantastic. That's great. However, if that doesn't happen and you don't perform, it goes the other way. So if you're valued at 70% scholarship and you don't perform, you don't score goals, and you don't get on the field even, that might go down, which is going to then cause complications in terms of financially how you affording your education ultimately. And it happens at every team. It happened with a lad from Quito, Ecuador. He was tabbed as being one of the best things that was ever going to come to LIU Post when I was there, and he was out of shape in pre-season. He didn't pass his 2-mile fitness test, so that's firstly, this is rubbish. And then he didn't really get on the field. I think he went on the field 3 times in 25 games for the season, and after that the coach went, right, I'm going to have to take this amount away. If you perform, they'll go back up. But there's a lot riding on the individual in terms of athletic ability, which then, as I said before, can lead to other complications in terms of funding and everything really while you're out there. Now, in terms of academics, let's say a student went out there with a decent GPA. So in the UK, we have entry requirements such as A-level grades, and universities for BTEC, for example, might want a DDM to get to physiotherapy, something like that, just as an example. In terms of the United States, everybody does what we call the SAT exam, which is a college entry-level SAT exam. So when our students in the UK did the SATs in year 6, year 9, is exactly that, just continued. So what they'll study will be a English, maths, and sort of history exam, or like sociology exam, which takes about 7 hours over a full day of testing. This will give students a score up to 1,600, and then depending on that, so for example, a university might have an entry requirement of 1,200. It might have an entry requirement of 800. If it's low, I'm assuming it's not a very good university. If it's 1,600, we're looking at your Harvard, your Yales, Browns, Princetons, which is the Ivy League schools. For sort of your mid-range schools and decent Division 1, Division 2 schools, we're probably looking at around 1,200 to 1,400 as a combined score. And if somebody does well on that, they might be eligible to gain academic scholarship and money as well. So from a coaching standpoint, if we can have a student that comes in that's a decent player, let's call them a 70% scholarship student that covers 70% tuition, covers books, and also he or she's quite good academically, that might add in another 12 grand. Okay, that means that's like an 82% package or 85% package. Student then needs to fund the other 15%. So there's ways that it can be very beneficial to somebody who's good academically and good athletically. Which are typically students we get at college that want to go out to the US. But there is that side of things that coaches like to consider as well. So if a coach can hold on to somebody and spread those 10 scholarships across because of academic money, then that will be kind of beneficial to the coach and the player as well.
I think it's important as well to say though as well that obviously the cost of that can change each year, but also the cost is quite expensive. So, a usual typical fee in America, obviously in the UK, you're paying probably about £9,000 a year. In America, degrees are $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. So it's a massive increase. Even though you get 82% of that, you're still expected probably to be finding 5, 6, up to 10K a year. And also the government doesn't help you out that. You can't get a student loan for that.
No, absolutely not. So, like you said, Danny, that 85% scholarship sounds fantastic, but then you bring that back, where cost of living over there, it differs. There's so much money in the United States. In the UK, it's not as much. We have such a small economy, so therefore we don't earn as much. So therefore, parents, because we don't get funding, we can't. UCAS and sort of student loans in the UK won't give funding to study outside the UK, so it doesn't stimulate our economy. The only way you could do it is if your parents have got a lot of money, if you've got a lot of savings, inheritance, whatever. That's the only way you could potentially fund those sort of, let's say it was 10 grand a year for 4 years, that's £40,000.
Yeah.
That's more than what a lot of people earn yearly, to study over 4 years, to then fund you being over, that's just for tuition.
Yeah.
What if you in your scholarship there isn't accommodation? What if you have to rent a house with people like I did and quite a lot of people do? We're looking at $700 a month per rent.
I think it's also important as well to know that if you are in America on a student visa, you can't work. You're not allowed to work. To supplement that, you can't get a part-time job out there because your visa, your green card doesn't cover that. So the money will fly back, and also there's added costs as well that people just need to be understood about. And we're not trying to make this to be a real down or it's a really bad thing. It's an amazing opportunity, but we're trying to be realistic. Flights to and from home will cost a certain amount of money. Like you said, you was on the East Coast, which is great because it was 6-7 hours, quite cheap flights. But if you're in Denver, in Colorado, if you're on the other side on the West Coast, on LA, San Francisco, then them flights are quite more expensive, and the college won't pay for them. You've got to pay for them yourselves.
Exactly, and if you're going back and forth twice per year, it's a lot of money as well. On top of that, you've got health insurance to consider. It's a country where we don't have universal healthcare, but you need some kind of health insurance, which is expensive. In terms of your immigration status as a student on an F1 visa, you're not allowed to work. The only way you can work is if you do an internship, and you get a paid internship, but you're also limited in how many of those you can do throughout your time. You can only do 2. So there's a lot of moving parts we need to consider if students are serious about going out there. And it's like you just said, it's that realization that it is amazing, it's glamorous, it's fantastic if it works, but it's also extremely expensive if it doesn't work properly and you don't get a decent offer, etc. One of the big things I think you just touched on there is location. A lot of students say the words, "I'm going to go to America." Brilliant. Where are you going to go? I don't know. Okay, but New York State is bigger than England. Yeah. And you spoke to Mo Adams earlier this week, who went to Syracuse, New York. Yeah. And that's 4 hours away from Manhattan. That's upstate New York. I went to Long Island University in New York, and that's 45 minutes from Manhattan. Yeah. I've had friends that transferred to Long Island from places like West Virginia Wesleyan, which is literally a tiny little university surrounded by fields. There's nothing there other than a Walmart and Asda. So there's so many things to consider, and one of the big things would be to think about the state you want to go in. Yeah. New York's close. You've got places like Massachusetts, where Boston is, and that's quite a close place if you don't want to be too far from home. If you want to go to California, the other side of the country, there's a lot of opportunities in places like Florida, etc. But one thing to consider is how close is the nearest airport. Yeah. So the nearest airport could be 4 or 5 hours away by car, and then how you get from the airport to meet your coach at the university, which is it's a tiny thing to consider, but it's massive. Yeah. Imagine getting there with your suitcase, and you've got to make it somehow to this uni.
I think it's also important as well to realise it, and the big hopefully thing coming out from this video and this chat is research is so key and critical. If you look at America, and like I say, the different states are like moving to different countries. And I know that from living out there in Colorado, when I went from there to Wyoming to Montana, down to Idaho, each state has its own kind of politics. It has its own religious, kind of different things that people have religious things. So where you're going to be in university, you've got to really research and understand the state, the kind of the politics side of it, the religious aspect of it. You need to understand, like you said, where the nearest airfield is, lots and lots of things. So just because someone says, "Oh, we've got you a scholarship in Louisiana," would you be able to live out there? If you're living in Texas, the heat in the summer is stifling. If you're, like we talked about with Mo Adams in Syracuse. Syracuse is nearer Canada than it is New York City. You're nearer, Niagara Falls than you are, the Empire State. And Mo said he had to really understand that the winter is bitter. It was snowing every day. It was 10-foot of snow. So you've got to understand these different climate changes and everything else that goes with this the pact.
Absolutely, yeah. Your location scheme, like I said, research is going to be one of the biggest things. If a student is serious about going to the United States, they'll be looking at where they want to study rather than, "I'm just going to go to America to play." Imagine an American picking a place in England and ending up in Doncaster rather than London. That's exactly what it will be like. Yeah. And I know you'll laugh and everybody will, but that's exactly what it will be like. So that research is key, and it takes time. It takes a lot of time. So if you're a first year student right now and you're thinking about it, you need to start that process now, because you need to have the dialogue with coaches via email.
Yeah.
You need to allow some time to take your SAT exam, which only run October, December, February. Yeah. You need time to put your recruitment video together. And you need time to discuss with your parents and your families and your guardians of how you're going to make it work if that's what you want to do and what you're going to do. And on top of that, you need to be able to negotiate your offers. So you might get an offer. Let's say you do get an offer, 8 months before you're supposed to go out, and it's an average to decent offer. But in actual fact, financially, families could do with that extra 5-10 grand. How could you get that? And it's a difficult conversation to have, and I guess that's where the agencies kind of come in. But again, to deal with college coaches, they want to deal with you and your family directly rather than messing around with middlemen. So there's a lot of things to consider, but the whole experience it's fantastic. And if you do get an offer and you want to sit down and talk to it, I know myself, yourself, James Maudsley, we're very happy to kind of discuss with you what we think is decent and maybe not so decent.
And I think that's the thing. You got to look at the pros. I mean, the pros of living in America and studying out there, it's an amazing lifestyle. You meet some friends that are, last a lifetime. You've got some connections around there. I mean, I'm still in contact with people from Colorado and from, like I say, even when I went back down to New Jersey, some great families there and chats and talks. But I think what we're trying to do with this video is to give you a realization of what it is. There's a glamour side of it, and one good thing that America are very good at is advertising and marketing and making things look amazing. And we need you to be real about what is actually behind all the nuts and bolts of it to make an informed decision. And like you say, you can start that now.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of sort of being a student athlete, it sounds fantastic when you say, I went out to the United States, I played football there, X, Y, and Z, or whatever sport it is. But it's tough. Yeah. The reality is the sports season, depending on what sport you play, will run for 3 months, and it's an intense season where you're training 6 days. You're in action 6 days a week. You get 1 day a week off. So imagine Monday, Tuesday, you're up at 6 o'clock. So you've got training at 6:30 till 8:30, and before your lectures start at 9. Yeah. And then you're in lectures 9 to 5, which we'll talk about classes in a second. And then Wednesday you've got a game, and then Thursday you've got recovery/active session. Friday you've got a prep session at 6:30 again, and then you've got another game Saturday. Then it repeats again, so you've got another game Tuesday. Yeah. And it's so intense. It's brilliant because everything flies by quickly, but it's so intense. Yeah. And it's mentally draining and it's physically tough. The other thing to consider as well is that if you think you're one of those students that can handle it, you're going to be away from college for like 4 days at a time if you have an away trip. Yeah. So, for example, we went to DC and we had 2 away games. We left on a Wednesday on a bus. It takes forever. Got to the hotel Wednesday night. We had a game Thursday, recovery session, game Saturday. Travel back up to New York Sunday. But then I've just missed 3 days of university lecture. Yeah. I've missed deadlines. And I've got to then work my socks off to get that in for the next week because I've agreed that with my professor. And it's a massive workload. And if you're struggling with E-Tech at the minute, then I don't think step to university there is right for you. So you might need to kind of up your game a little bit if that's what you're looking to do. In terms of academics, it's so American, but over in the UK, you pick your degree, you study it for 3 years. So, for example, if I did it in the UK, I was going to go to Leeds Met University, I was going to do physical education and sports, I wanted to be a PE teacher. In the United States, I had no clue how it worked. And this is where I got so naive with it. I had no idea that I would go there and I would do general studies for 2 years, where I'd take classes each semester on random stuff. So one example was I did a 3-hour lecture on the history of world cinema. I don't know why I had to take it, but I had to take it. Yeah. And I used to sit in a lecture hall and watch black and white films, like the first ever film that got made, with the Citizen Kane and stuff. And we had to write reviews of these films. And I'm like, but I want to be a PE teacher. Exactly. What has this got to do with it? The whole purpose of the US education system is that you take electives and you get like a holistic approach to education. So you might be studying things like English, maths, philosophy, French, yoga, loads of different stuff. And it's not until year 2 or 3 you start to actually take the classes you need for your designated degree, your major, what you call it. But my major was physical education with a concentration in teaching. And it was not until my second year I started looking at teaching methodologies and kinesiology and biomechanics. But that was long after I'd done yoga and history and cinema. And with that, as a young student athlete, you have to maintain a certain grade to be eligible to play. So Division 1 and Division 2, I think it's 3.0, which is a B overall in your classes. Okay, if you drop below that 3.0, you're not eligible. You're not allowed to be on the field by the NCAA, the national governing body's regulations. You're not allowed to play. So the coach cannot play you if you're not going to pull your weight academically. We used to have meetings every so often, every 2-3 weeks, how you get on academically. And you could see everything on the system, how you get on academically. But we'd also get emails from professors. So-and-so is not behaving, he's not showing up to class for 3 weeks or whatever it is. And you'd be pulled in, and that might affect your athletic scholarship, academic scholarship might go out the window. And there's a lot of pressure on that. It's a great system, it works, because everyone has to buy into it, so you get that really closeness with your mates and stuff. But it's something you need to understand. So when you're looking at the university websites and you click on the academic, undergraduate courses, just understand you're not just going to be studying what it says right in front of your sports management or whatever it is. You will be doing golf. You will be doing yoga, and you'll do a bit of philosophy. And it's cool. It is cool, don't get me wrong. It's just different. It's not a different education system. In terms of, like you just mentioned, some of the people you meet over there, if you're fortunate enough to go to university, it's very diverse and it's got a lot of international people, which the United States is built on immigration anyway. You're going to meet so many great people. You're going to make friends for life. We meet up, my friends from Long Island, we meet up once a year. Last year was Belgium. We were supposed to meet this month in England, but obviously we can't, so we're going to postpone that to later on. But yeah, you meet so many great people and these friends for life, you know. But yeah, so many great memories. So many great memories.
I think, like I say, just to kind of round it off, I mean, learners now at this age, I mean, in their year one, looking at what they want to do after this course, what's the top 3 things you would say to them that they need to really focus on now to make sure that by the time they're here next year, they're in a place that they can move out to the States, or they can obviously have an athletic scholarship?
I think the first one is to make sure that you are unbelievably mature and independent already. And if you're not, you need to make drastic changes to get there. Because at 18, you're an adult, firstly. But there's a difference between an adult and being at home with your family than moving continents and not seeing your family for upwards of a year and a half, you know, only through FaceTime. There's a lot of maturity that's needed, a lot of maturity. And coaches need to see that in your emails and in your conversations, because going gets tough. It does get tough. Homesickness happens. Don't matter how tough you are now. Homesickness will happen. What happens if you get injured? How do you deal with that mentally? Because there's a massive mental side to it. What happens if you're not getting too much playing time because you're a first year student and you're getting little bits but not doing enough to show how good you are? Because this will happen. So maturity, you know, being able to deal with that stuff it takes a lot of maturity, a lot of independence. And that to me is probably the number one thing, is that if you do get the chance to go over there, you know how to take care of yourself, you know how to act in situations, you know how to cook and clean and all that kind of stuff, because these are little things that you'll need to take care of. Definitely that's the first one. Secondly, I think understanding your limits or where you're at, that's a massive one as well. So you've got, in terms of NCAA, you've got Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. Division 3 is all state-funded schools. They're smaller universities, don't offer athletic scholarships, but you could go there and study and play, it'd be decent. Division 2, Division 1 offer athletic and academic monies. People fall under the misconception that from Division 1 you can get promoted to Division 2. Division 1 you can be, Division 2 to Division 1 and relegated, etc. It doesn't work that way. In terms of Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3, what it refers to is funding of the size of the university. So Penn State University, UConn, Oregon State, these are massive universities at Division 1 that they turn over millions and millions and millions of dollars each year, and they attract 80, 90,000 people to watch their college football teams play each week. And this is where Division 1 comes from in terms of the size of the school. They're like small cities. They're small towns and cities. They're massive. There's hundreds of thousands of people there. Division 2, for example, they could be better at the sport that you want to do, but just be a smaller school. So they could be better than Division 1 hockey program. This Division 2 program could be, absolutely. It just depends on money.
Yeah.
So each universities will play in a conference, and they'll stay in that conference for the duration of their years. So I played in the East Coast Conference, and LIU was still in that up until last year when they changed to a D1 school because they got big enough and financially big enough to become D1.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean they're playing in a better conference and better football anymore. They could be worse. For all I know, we were ranked number 1 in the country for years and years. Now they're not nationally ranked.
Yeah.
So who knows what that means, D1 and D2. Don't fall into that trap that D1, D2 is you must go D1 or you must go, So what I'm getting at here is that students need to understand where they're at. So Mo Adams, for example, was at Nottingham Forest, Derby, and was released, 17, 18,
Yeah.
he was right there. Could he got a pro contract, could he not have? Could he have gone somewhere else in England to play pro? Probably. He's at that level. Championship, Premiership level.
Absolutely.
I was at Rotherham, League One, mid-table League One. I was only there for 6 months. Played for South Yorkshire schoolboys, England schools and stuff like that. I wasn't quite at that level of was I going to make it. I knew from a long time I was probably never going to make it. I'm 5'3". Right?
On a good day.
Yeah, on a good day. Big shoes. But I knew where I was at, so I knew that I wasn't going to email Akron and Maryland, who win nationals at D1 every year, because they're the biggest schools in the union. They're the best at Division 1. I might be better at a mediocre or average D1 school. It's a good program that was offering money, and I will play in front of 2,000 people a night, and that's kind of knew where I was at. And then, so I went to Hofstra University. That was D1. And the level wasn't that good, but I was probably right on the cusp of bench/playing.
Yeah.
And then I had to deal with, how am I going to go about, is this what I want for 4 years? Am I going to be able to progress, etc.? So I ended up transferring to a D2 school, which was LIU Post, right around the corner. And the footballing program there was so much better. I had more international players. Coach was Swedish, assistant coach was English, other assistant was Scottish. And we ended up, like I said before, becoming nationally ranked for years and playing in the NCAA tournament up until December. Played against Hofstra, who were D1 school, beat them, scored a hat-trick against them, etc. And it's just, you've got to kind of understand where you're at and where that program is at, if that's what you're looking at. The big one is understanding where you're at. If you're currently at college and you're playing college-level football in the UK and you're not with an academy, I wouldn't be encouraging you, not saying you can't, but I wouldn't be encouraging you to go and reach out to your top 25 Division 1 units. Yeah. I would be encouraging you to look at your Division 2 / rank number 75 Division 1, somewhere around there, where it's going to be a good fit for you and your ability level. If that makes sense. And then I think the last one would be make sure you're on top of everything. Yeah. Just if you're going to start the process, start it now. You research, you communicate with parents, you communicate with staff, such as yourselves and myself and James, and you're on top of your BTEC. So come next June, you're ready to be signed out with no retakes or anything like that nonsense that's going to hinder you.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely just make sure you're organised if you're dead serious about going over there. Absolutely.
No. That's fantastic, Jonny. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
That's all right.
All right,
That's
take care.
If students have questions, they can get in touch however they want.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Jonny.